the American chestnut tree. It was huge, it was magnificent, and could live 400 years. They were perfect for telegraph and telephone poles. The wood refused to rot or decay, so it made great railroad ties. Log homes were made from the American chestnut trees, as well as shingles, wall paneling, barn rafters, fence railings, home furnishings, pianos, and guitars. It provided pulp for making paper, and its tannic acid was essential for treating leather. It was harvested by the trainload. Suddenly, in 1903, tragedy struck. An orange airborne fungus blew in from Asia. It penetrated the trees, attacked their food source, and eventually killed them. In 1983, the American Chestnut Foundation organized 300 orchards across the country for the purpose of hybridizing the American chestnut with the healthier Chinese chestnut, with the goal of creating a blight-resistant strain. More about that in a moment. You can find one such orchard with over 300 trees right here in Falls Village on the Undermountain Road.
We really want that to be moist all the way through, but not runny.
Students from the Housatonic Valley Regional High School, under the supervision of Wood Sinclair, started the trees in 2007.
The tree was immensely valuable from several points of view. That is why the effort to bring that tree back, instead of planting Chinese or Japanese chestnut trees, which are much smaller by comparison, do not have the girth of, sometimes the biggest ones were 9 feet in diameter.
Wow.
When I was a kid, this is how I became interested. In our house down the road, behind the house was an old chestnut ghost that had died probably sometime during the 30s, maybe 40s. But probably it looked old enough then, so it probably died in the 20s. It was 4 feet in diameter at DBH, that is diameter breast height. It had been, the branches had been lopped off and about 20 feet high. And so it just stood there with its truncated branches. I was fascinated by that tree. It stood out so in the forest, just above the house. When I went to college and didn't come back until, 1960 something or other, a storm had taken that tree down. But on the ground still, and to this day, just barely, are the shards of the outer part of that tree. They lie on the ground while the interior is all decayed. And they are still there, just pieces of it today.
But that is what is left, Eric, right in there of an American chestnut tree, a ghost. And that wood there has been on the ground probably for 75 years. So here you have, look at the width of that, look at the width of that trunk. Marvelous forest tree. Isn't that extraordinary? And here it is. I mean, it's funky now, the interior, but the shards of that old ghost.
Now, let's see here. Going back to the use of lumber. You know, Abe Lincoln's nickname was what?
Old Hickory? No, that was
Honest Abe. Honest Abe. Log splitter. Rail splitter.
You're right, the log splitter.
He had a lot of
That's
nicknames.
because when he was a young man, he split chestnut logs for posts and especially rails. Somebody asked me, there are stands of chestnuts existing today in Oregon and in Wisconsin because the colonists, when they left the farms in the east and went west for various reasons from gold to land, they took the chestnut with them because it was such a valuable tree. Valuable from the point of view of lumber. It wouldn't rot. It was very rot resistant.
How fast did these trees grow? I mean, the settlers were heading out west with their chestnuts. How fast did they grow that they were going to be able to utilize those
Well,
trees?
to give you an example, these hybrids were planted in 2007. See the height on the ones in the front here. Those were planted, what, we talking 14 years ago?
Yeah.
And it was very fast growing.
This here says by 1950, approximately 4 billion trees were
Right, thank you.
on 9 million acres.
Yeah.
So that's
1950, 4 billion trees had been killed. And they still hadn't really found any way to halt the disease. Anyway, the American Chestnut Foundation came up with a solution one to work with. That was to establish a hybrid between the American and the Chinese, which is very resistant, if not entirely resistant, to the disease. That's what these are. These chestnuts here were developed over labor-intensive efforts from 1/2 Chinese, 1/2 American. Essentially, they take the pollen from a Chinese chestnut and fertilize the flowers on an American chestnut. So then you have a half American, half Chinese. The progeny of those chestnuts were the ones that were best and most resistant. They were back-crossed again. And that gave you a 3/4 American and 1/4 Chinese. You can see where this is going.
Yeah.
By the third generation, we're up to 7/8. That's what these are. 7/8 American, 1/8 Chinese. Earlier this summer, the Connecticut Chestnut Society came in, and we had kids from the high school, a few, and lots of volunteers. Some of you are here. Vaccinate these chestnuts.
No, inoculate.
Okay,
Inoculate.
okay, well,
Not
vaccinate's the big word these days. But inoculated the chestnuts.
Now we need a vaccination.
They drill a little hole. In that little hole, they put the fungus. Then they cover it up. These chestnuts here, all of them, are now inoculated with the fungus. 50% of them had the disease anyway. The ones that survive and live and show the stature and characteristics of the original American chestnut, those will be used for the next 3 generations. We're not quite there with this yet, because it takes about 7 to 9 years for these babies to come into flower.
I think the one thing I was going to bring out with young kids, I always, I would say you may, or your grandchildren may see these in the forest, but we're not gonna. I mean, we see with the sprouts, and to think multi-generationally, like your folks did, and young kids don't think that way, and to make them start to think that way is kind of a neat thing to present to them. And the other fact that basically we're in here trying to kill these trees. It's an experiment, and there's a control and all that. Yeah. So it was neat. It was a neat thing.
So it was a perfect laboratory for the high school students.
Yeah, I think the one thing that we did earlier this summer, though, was they had 2 different strains of the fungus. So we were hitting them low with one strain, and then about 2 or 3 feet up the stem if it was a reasonably viable stem, it had looked viable for a while, and pretty clear and showed no signs of any kind of necrosis or fungus. They'd do another one, and that was a different strain. So it's sort of very much like, it's sort of like vaccination is probably right. It was like the discovery of smallpox vaccine, where they used cowpox and injected it into literally the pustules of the smallpox to kill that, to build the immunity. So they'll come back, and they actually, you'll see the tags. We can look at, there should be maybe the little blue tape still on the trees. I don't know where but somebody numbered with a grease pencil where the different strains were placed in the tree.
What about you and yours? You got the day off?
Oh, were you?
I actually had a dream about you.
You're going to miss the chestnut cookies.
Have to come back.
Well, Mary Lou can give you some chestnut cookies and a chocolate cider.
No, I think they've exposed them. Yeah, some of them they exposed them then.
Very well.
See how they respond to that. They've shown good resistance, from what I understand. And so there's the upper inoculation. That's the stronger. This is the weaker. You can even see a little dent there, almost like it's already showing some, you know.
So this was the first time that the...
First time we've done this purposeful inoculation, or
How long does it take to show?
it should show pretty quick. I mean, within a year, you'll know that, you know, something's happening.
Main stem, see the, stick
Yes.
your head in there, you see the bark is just, and what,
Oh, I see, yes, over
you know,
here.
all the vascular system of the tree is on the outer ring, right? The flow up and down, and it
So
just
there's
comes
pockets
up.
of still uninfected.
Of extras? Yeah, sure. Thank you. I appreciate that. Anyway, this is wonderful. I'm so glad that you guys are. I had no idea it took so long to regenerate after all of that.